Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, June 16th, 2022, and in Texas's 34th Congressional District, there was a special election held on June 14th, 2022, just 2 days ago. And in this special election, there was a Democratic-held seat, one that had been held since the inception of this district and has never gone to a Republican, flipped for the first time in its history. The Republican Party swung this seat relative to the presidential election by over 10 points, and relative to the last election by well over 20 points. And looking at the 34th Congressional District, this is a district which FiveThirtyEight rates as having a partisan lean of Democrat plus 5. If you take a look at the old map, the 34th District was held by a Democrat, and in the last election, the Democrats actually won this district by 14 points. So to see a Democrat go from a 14-point victory in the 2020 House elections to a 2022 special election in which a Republican wins 51% of the vote, and the combined Republican Party vote share here is 53%, tells you exactly what you need to know for the upcoming 2022 House elections. Now, I am going to say that this individual district contains a significant portion of southern Texas in a very big region in which the Democratic Party has seen a lot of pushback towards them, including in the 2020 presidential election. If you take a look at the 2020 election results in the state of Texas, you will find that nearly every single southern border county, in addition to many other predominantly Hispanic counties, shifted overwhelmingly in favor of the GOP. It was a consistent trend that we had seen and expected, and now can expect to see again in 2022. This shift towards the Republican Party is not just a product of Donald Trump being on the ballot, but rather a continued effort, and a successful effort at that, at swaying the Hispanic vote by the Republican Party. And as we can see in Texas's 34th district, it was done very effectively. Now, there is a lot more nuance to this situation, a lot more that needs to be discussed, because in the truest sense, this race probably wasn't as contested as it otherwise might have been had Democrats seen this as an opportunity for a continued incumbent into the general election. I'm not at all trying to downplay the Republican Party's victory here, but there of course are factors in here that we need to mention and discuss looking at the 34th district, because it is important to understand how a Republican was able to flip this district by 20 points relative to the last House election and to Biden by about 10 points. Just so much happened. So many things went wrong for the Democrats, right for the Republicans, so let's go ahead and get into it. So, to begin, we know that the 34th district flipped last evening. Mayra Flores ended up winning outright. And many Democrats actually expected this district to head off into a runoff election. That was sort of part of the fact that there was 2 Democrats running and 2 Republicans running. People thought that there might be a flip here, but not necessarily right now, not necessarily in the first election. And what we've seen in the state of Texas and states that implement runoff situations such as this, you would need to get under 50%. So let's say Mayra Flores was at 49%, she would not have won this election outright and would have been pushed off into a runoff election in August. And this truly wasn't meant to be a race that was decided outright. Many Democrats did expect this runoff election to be near certainty, just because of the fact that nobody expected a race to be outright won, especially in such a previously, at least, Democratic district. But it happened for a reason. And when you take a look at the margins here, the Republican Party got, might I remind you, 52.6% of the vote, and the Democrats got 47.4% of the vote. It was about a 6-point margin between the Republican Party vote share and the Democratic Party vote share, and it was quite interesting to say the least. But looking at the results here, I would say this is a very, very skillful showing from Mayra Flores, but the problem lies in the fact that also Democrats didn't contest this race in the way that you might think. Looking at the 34th Congressional District, we knew there was going to be a special election. But like I said, nobody really expected it to be decided in this election. So the Democratic Party did not even put forth an effort within this district. In fact, Mayra Flores out-fundraised Dan Sanchez, the leading Democratic contender, who is now the runner-up in this election, 20-1. 20-1, that ratio of fundraised numbers. And the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, also known as the DCCC, did not necessarily touch this race, did not necessarily touch the 34th district, at least in a way that you might expect in a traditional congressional race. And there is a reason for that. And it comes down to congressional redistricting. While this is a major victory for the GOP and definitely tells you a lot about the shifts and the changes within our nation and within especially predominantly Hispanic districts and counties, because we've seen the Republican Party push for initiatives and victories such as this, and now they are finally getting them, we also have to recognize that redistricting played a major role in this. What do I mean by that? Well, this district, the 34th, was Democrat plus 5. The newly drawn 34th district, at least that contains Mayra Flores and other people within the district, is now Democrat plus 17. And there is another Democrat within the state of Texas. What had happened is that the 34th district went from being a district that captured in significant portions of the middle part of Texas, while also the southern part of Texas, now is pretty much relying itself on being on the Gulf of Mexico and just on the southern border. The 34th Congressional District now has a Democratic incumbent who will face off against Mayra Flores. There was also consideration that Democrats really didn't want there to be another incumbent on the Democratic side within the 34th District. Should there have been a competitive primary between one Democrat versus the other, it could have fractured the Democrats in a district that have been, and will likely be, otherwise very easy to win. Looking at this newly drawn district, Democrat plus 17 is a strong partisan lean. Realistically, Democrats don't have much to worry about. Even if the new 34th district was to swing by the same amount that this district swung 2 nights ago, it would still be a Democratic victory by about 10 points. And to expect 6 months from now or 5 months from now for this district to flip and swing by an additional 10 points is just truly unrealistic. You are talking about a newly drawn congressional district that Democrats aren't going to lose. So that's also something to take into consideration as well. But I would also like to say that no matter what type of idea or metric the Democratic Party was using to gauge whether or not they needed to intervene in this race, they should have. Dan Sanchez ran as a conservative Democrat. He ran as a Democrat that aligned with many voters on social issues, but not necessarily, I would say, Democratic voters. He labeled himself as pro-life. He adopted many conservative ideologies, but still ran under the Democratic agenda. I guess I'm only pointing this out because typically the reasoning that we see as to why Democrats lose in some of these more predominantly minority districts or predominantly specifically Hispanic districts is because of their progressive ideals or ideologies that are outside of the realm of consideration for some voters. And that was very clearly wrong within this 34th district. But that's not the main focus of this video. But I think the Democratic Party, no matter what, should have put forth all the efforts that they could have within this district. Because what this tells the Republican Party is that victory is within reach. The same exact thing that we saw happen when Conor Lamb won that special election back in 2018. I don't know if you guys all remember the special election in 2018 in the state of Pennsylvania. I don't know if you were watching politics then, but I remember covering it live. Because Conor Lamb won in the 17th Congressional District in a special election, despite the fact that it was a district that voted for Donald Trump, might I tell you, by a significant vote. Taking a look at the history, this is a new district here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the old district. It was a Trump plus 20 district at the time. Let's see if we can find the special election. It was a super significant amount here. Conor Lamb, let's just go ahead and do some maneuvering around the special election. It was March 2018. It was an election that was months before the midterms and would give the Democratic Party an idea about where they were going to be. It would give the Democratic Party an idea about what was going to happen within the state and what was going to happen within the nation. And looking at the results, I do believe that this was a very big showing for the Democratic Party, showing them that they could win elections that might have been out of reach before, that they could win races that would have been previously thrown away, that a Trump plus 20 district could have gone towards the Democrats because of the national environment. While this new 34th district isn't exactly as partisan, or at least the old 34th district wasn't as partisan as the Pennsylvania 18th district was, it is still very, very impressive that Mayra Flores was able to win. And it does send nearly the same message, that in a victory such as this, because this is the first congressional flip for the GOP. They've won elections that they held previously. Democrats have won elections that they've held previously. But in this 34th district, this was never meant to be the first real test. It was meant to be in August in that New York district. But this ended up being a surprise and more of a shock factor for the Democrats and a very good result for the GOP that confirms a lot of their suspicions and a lot of their good suspicions. And people take this as it is. They see this as a very early warning sign, just as we expect Republicans to win control of the House. I had said from the very beginning, from the day that Biden was elected and inaugurated and had been on his 6-month honeymoon, the 2022 House elections were always going to go to the GOP because the House majority was so exceptionally thin. Well, now the House majority is even more exceptionally thin. The margin between Democrats and Republicans, 221 to 214, 7 seats. Should the Republican Party win 3 more seats, or 4 more seats from where they are right now, they will win the House majority. And I can guarantee you, they will likely win well more than 4 seats, especially if they are flipping districts that were previously Biden plus 5, Democrat plus 13. The margins here were very substantial. And while they did narrow down during Trump, that also likely should have been the first warning sign, seeing that the Democrat won by 14 points in 2018, won by 20 points, won in 2016 by 25 points. This district has had a consistent rightward trend from 2016 to 2018 to 2022 to 2020. And now 2022, it has officially gone red. But we do have to recognize that in the new district, Democrats will win it. There is near certainty the Democrats do win this new 34th district. It would take an insane political upset for the GOP to win in a district with a partisan lean of Democrat plus 17. Democrat plus 5 is realistic. Democrat plus 17 is not. But when you take a look at the national overview and you take a look at all the districts that are Democrat plus 5 or less, you're talking about 30 to 40 seats that Democrats might hold, Republicans might hold. But at the end of the day, you can very easily find the 4 Democratic seats that Republicans need, and they will more than likely outperform that. This has been a very consistent trend we have seen in elections held between the 2020 election and the 2022 elections. You take a look at New Jersey. The Democratic governor won by 3 points. That is a state that voted for Biden by 16. Virginia went to Biden by 10 points. What had happened in the governor's race in 2021? The Republican won it by 2. 12-point swing, 13-point swing. Texas, 13-point swing. What are you looking at? You are seeing a very consistent swing. You are seeing a very consistent trend, and everything, and I mean everything, is telling us the Republican Party is set for victory in 2022. As I said before, and as I talked about many times, not much is going to change the trajectory of these midterms. So far, I think the Democratic Party really needs to focus on damage control, and I think they recognize that. Obviously, a House majority would be nice for the Democratic Party, but after they suffered last-minute redistricting losses, in addition to the fact that there just simply were last-minute Republican victories, on top of the fact that looking at the national environment, things don't seem to be getting on the up and up. Inflation is increasing. Gas prices are increasing. Biden's approval is decreasing. Everything is going wrong for the Democratic Party right now, and it's happening because that's how it always is. Every midterm is this way. The incumbent party loses seats. They lose a chamber or 2, as Democrats might experience. And it could be very, very interesting. So looking at our House elections right now, this 34th district, this very good victory for the GOP, does say a lot. It is a testament to their electability, and it means Democrats need to fight back. They should not have just given up the seat because they didn't want there to be a Democrat versus Democrat primary. Obviously, there's no guarantee that that was the true reasoning behind it. But it does seem a little bit odd that a race that should have been contested was not fully contested to the extent that we expected, or really anyone could have seen. The Democratic campaign said here in the 34th district, Sanchez said their campaign had pretty much mentioned that the Democratic Party really did not offer much support. The Texas Democrats also recognized that. Many Democrats across the state realized that the Democratic Party really dropped the ball within this district. And while the same thing can be said for the Republican Party in the 18th Congressional District in Pennsylvania, which arguably isn't true, Donald Trump went out there to campaign for Rick Saccone. There were many ads, a lot of money spent on the race. What you will find, though, is that these special elections are the first real tests. They tell you how much the nation is going to swing by. They tell you where we are right now. Should the midterms be held today, what would you have seen in this district? You would have seen a Republican victory. Voters are turning on the Democratic Party, and we are seeing it happen in real time. Things can change. We still have not received a decision from the Supreme Court on Roe v. Wade, but I expect that to be slightly changing the narrative. I don't know how much it will. I think I expected it to change it a lot more, but then again, the decision still hasn't been fully released. A draft is not a final opinion, and a lot of people also haven't heard about the draft or recognized what it actually means. Once these trigger laws are into effect and other things happen, I think it could change the trajectory of the midterms, but there's no guarantee that it does, and I wouldn't exactly say that it's super likely to do so. Voters still recognize that inflation is at an all-time high, that gas prices are at an all-time high. While it might be due to price gouging from the oil companies and gas companies, at the end of the day, it's what the American voter experiences, how much they pay for things, whether or not the middle class is being squeezed. All of these things are factors that play into how someone might vote, and while they may have voted for a Democrat, we've seen in this special election in Texas's 34th Congressional District. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.